Good morning. Good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? Start with a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord. Thank you so much for your word and for all the promises that you give us. And as we investigate and study your word, Lord, we learn so much more about you. Thank you so much. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen. Okay, Genesis 8. I think we'll do the whole chapter. This flood is subsiding, and the Noahic covenant begins. Also known as the dispensation of human government. The human government is going to be set up. Human government, believe it or not, is ordained by God. And it's part of the reason that in the beginning they tried to set up one leader type of a situation. That's not what God intended. That he expected countries with borders and individual governments that led their individual peoples. Let's get started and put the verses up here. Okay, there's the verses, and we got a new picture today. Kind of an interesting picture. Particularly the top there. We're going to talk about that a little bit. It's kind of like just a little reflection of the artist and what he's trying to, some behind the scenes stuff that we talked about already. I'll just hit those right off the bat. That on the left there, kind of see an interesting display there. I won't describe it since sometimes YouTube has issues with certain words. So I won't say anything about that picture you see, but that we know it has something to do with that thing that happened in Genesis 6:15, where the sons of God came unto the daughters of men and bore children, and those children were a hybrid or a transhuman of basically the DNA of Satan, I believe, and of humans. Then over on the right side, that one I can talk about. That's actually Esther. If you remember the story of Esther, the next time that Satan has his way and tries to eliminate the Jews after this time, where he tried to corrupt the seed, the next time is going to be the story of Esther and Haman and his plot to try to kill all the Jews. And if you remember correctly, that at the end, Haman himself ended up getting hung on the gallows because originally he was going to hang all the Jews that way. And so he used the very gallows that he was going to hang the Jews on. And the king there, Xerxes, Esther, had him hung on the same gallows, kind of like due punishment. And at the end, actually, all of his children also. That was quite common then. And when somebody did something wrong in some of these worlds, they would eliminate the whole family to make sure that whatever thoughts the person, evil thoughts the person had that may have gone down into their children, didn't continue. So kind of an interesting way of handling family issues. But it's interesting to see, though, the artist. I started thinking about some of these theories because way back before I started hearing about some of this stuff, and it's funny that the Lord has shown me at least a dozen people that kind of think along the same lines I do of the interpretation of why the flood happened in the first place, and that Satan's going to do it again in the future. I believe that has a lot to do with the time in the tribulation we know as the mark of the beast. So let's continue on. I've actually got a section on that a little bit. I'm going to kind of talk about that again here in this, so I won't say much more right now. Let's start here in verse 1 of Genesis 8. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters basically assuaged, but started to retract. Well, time to get to work recovering from the deluge is why I look at this. Interesting words, God remembered Noah. I don't believe it's an indication God ever forgot him, but it's time to turn his attention back to Noah. I can imagine, just like other times in history, that God was forced to do something he did not take pleasure in. I think, and when I read this passage, it reminded me, and I don't know why, sometimes when I think about passages, it could be something I heard or something else I was reading, but for some reason, what came to mind is a passage in Revelation 8. Actually, Revelation 6. I can just imagine other times in history that God was forced to do something he did not take pleasure in. I think about a passage in Revelation where I believe God again must punish mankind and takes no pleasure in it. It's in a pause between the sixth and seventh seal judgment. So let's take a look over here in Revelation 6:12. Now I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of the mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. That's and what's going to happen next is in between the two, in between the sixth and seventh seal. I believe he's talking about the midway point of the tribulation, and now God's wrath will be poured out due to the Antichrist desecrating his holy temple. So let's just look at a few verses of this coming day when God again has to judge the world for a final time. So we see in a note in chapter 11, verse 13. In the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. In an earthquake were slain of men 7,000. And the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to God of heaven. What this earthquake may look like, we get here a glimpse of another passage. Jesus warns those in Judea to flee for their lives. I just realized, I never showed you that verse I wanted to show you. I didn't put it in here. Let me get that real quick. It's in Revelation 8. Revelation 8:1. This is what I was thinking of: is that God was not looking forward to what he had to do, and this is the verse I was thinking about when I started on this idea. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven about the space of a half hour. And I think it's just God kind of contemplating what he has to do, and it really bothered him to have to do what he's going to have to do during the tribulation. And so I was thinking about that when I was thinking about this, when Noah remembered Noah. Just to finish on my thought process here, get a glimpse of another passage. Jesus warns those in Judea to flee for their lives. And that's in Matthew 24. I know I originally put these verses in here. Okay. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whether we read this, let them understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let them which be in the housetops not come down to take anything out of their houses. Now let them that which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world, to this time, nor ever shall be. And except those days shall be shortened, there shall be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Also in Joel 2:10-11. The earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp are very great. But he is strong that he executeth his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can abide it? These are all talking about God's wrath that he's going to spiel out. And I believe that's why the silence. Well, first we had the whole thing there where the abomination of desolation. And basically, Antichrist is going to go into the temple, God's holy place, and desecrate it. He's going to offer an unclean animal. And that's probably why I thought of this too, is that Noah did have some unclean animals, but here he's sacrificing properly, and he's doing it in a proper way. And that's probably what made me think about it. Joel 2:31-32. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. So when this happens, basically Jesus told them that just leave town quickly. And this is when I think God is going to send an earthquake and a volcano and a bunch of other stuff that's going to cause all those things that we talked about to happen. And it basically he's going to go into full-scale attack against the Antichrist and against the people that are following him. And so just prior to that is when I think that half hour is. Just one more thing in Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. This is the prophecy of that prophecy. For the overspring of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So that basically that was Daniel telling us this is going to happen in the future. And of course this happens actually in Revelation 12:6-10. So let me just read through that, and then we'll get back to what we were talking about. And the woman fled, the woman in this case is Israel, fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that she should be fed there 1,260 days. That's the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels. And they prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. I believe that that verse there and that I was mentioning over there in Revelation 6 was that scene. I said the stars fall from heaven. Stars are symbolic of angels, in this case, fallen angels. And the reason that the sun and the stars was darkened was because volcanoes, when they blow off, they put up a bunch of ash, and you can't see the sky. It gets so dark. So I think that's a really good description of the midway point. And that's why I picked it. Revelation 12:10, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuses them before our God day and night. And jumping to verse 17, and the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which kept the commandment of God, had the testimony of Jesus Christ. So that those that did not flee into what I believe is Petra will be persecuted heavily by Satan and his minions. And there'll be a lot of other things happening at this time. Depending on what you guys want to do after we get done with this study, we may even go through to do some more Revelation stuff. But that's my little prophecy moment for today. So we will get back into Genesis. So talking about where we left off in Genesis 1:1. Let me just read it again. Genesis 8:1. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the water rescinded. So we also see in the time of Abraham how God remembers the righteousness of Abraham. And that's we'll see that when we get to Genesis 19:29. But here's another example of God remembering. And it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that's Sodom and Gomorrah, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrown. When he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt, that was due to an agreement that God had given to Abraham about protecting anyone who was righteous in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's what he meant by God remembered Abraham. So I was kind of seeing the two where when God said he remembered Noah, he remembered his obligation to Noah. And so I'm trying to show that instead of, not that he forgot Noah, but that he actually remembered, he was remembering the covenant that he was going to make with Noah over this. So 8:2. And the fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. And the ark rested on the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. So 40 days again, and we looked at this list yesterday, but here's one I missed over in Genesis 50, verse 2 and 3. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. Israel was another name for Jacob. And 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Another use of 40. And that's another period of time where things were really good, but it was just before the enslavement of the Jewish nation in Egypt. Okay, verse 8:7. So Noah sent forth, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro upon the waters were dried up from off the earth. Interesting thing about a raven. A raven is a bird of prey. They're like vultures, where they go after dead things. And I kind of think it's interesting that this raven never came back. This is kind of symbolic of something drawn to the world. Interesting that the raven never returned. We see this as a symbol of being drawn to the world. As a raven is an unclean bird. We see this over in Deuteronomy 14:12 through 14. But these are they of which ye shall not eat: the eagle and the ostrich and the osprey, and the glede and the kite and the vulture, any after his kind, and every raven after his kind. So it's an unclean bird. It's because they're forget that word. It means they eat dead animals. But the reason that the raven never came back is you can imagine that floating underwater and all around the earth were lots of bodies of animals and humans. And so the raven was like had plenty to eat, and he had no desire to go back to the ark. And I kind of see that symbolically, that he was drawn to the world and what the world offered, but that he had totally forgot his mission and did not go back to the righteous Noah to report back of what he knew. I thought that was a great message, in that as we are drawn to worldly pleasures of abundance, we forget God and never return. Just throw that little sermonette in there. Okay, Genesis 8:8. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated off of the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark. See, the dove had no interest in all those bodies out there. Of course, she probably could have landed on a body. That was disgusting to her, probably. I'm just thinking out loud. returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. Kind of almost symbolic of God reaching out and bringing him to us. We're going to see some symbology here with the dove, because the next time the dove comes back, it's with the olive branch. And they call that the peace offering. If you've ever seen that, you've probably seen that symbol of a dove with an olive branch, which stands for peace. Okay, verse 10, and he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf, plucked off. So Noah knew that the water was abated from off the earth. Obviously, the dove found some vegetation that was edible. But lots of people see that symbolically as peace. So that now that that peace has been achieved, it's kind of like the symbology there. And based on the fact that the dove had a mission, it did not stay away. It came back to report to Noah. That's another thing that once you're in God's pleasure, and yet you have a desire to come back to the righteous. Verse 12. And he stayed yet another 7 days and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. So you can see now that the dove it basically shows that the water was abated, and it showed Noah that it's time to get to work. So that this is a symbolic that it's time for Noah to leave the ark also. Verse 13 and 14. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering off the ark, and looked and beheld the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. Well, interesting enough, this kind of shows us, I pointed this out yesterday, this shows us exactly how long Noah was in the ark. And it was one full solar year, but plus the calendar changes. It's interesting how it shows us in the verses. Let me show you something here. So when we go back to verse 7:11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. So you see that 600 year and the second month, 17th day of the month. Now we jump to verse 8:15. And then we go back to 13. I mean, oh no, I gotta get to it just a minute. And God spoke unto Noah, saying, Go forth out of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons and their sons' wives. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creepy thing, and creepeth upon the earth. I'm not supposed to be here yet. Wait a minute. Oh, I'm supposed to go back to verse 13. So we had the 600th year. Then you come to verse 13 here, and it says the 601st year. So the full year, and the first month, though, it's not the second month. The first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, behold, the face was dry. So it isn't quite a year yet. But Noah also hasn't left the ark yet. He just uncovered it. But when we go to verse 14, in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And that's when Noah, so now we're in the second month, the 27th day. So it's 10 days later than a year ago when he left. And that's the difference between the lunar and the solar way of calculating a year. The lunar way actually comes out to a month is 29 and a half days, where a solar year, the month is 30 days long. So at this point, now Noah is looking at a 30-day month. So I'd point that out. So it was something that's pointed out in my Bible. I thought it was kind of interesting. Okay, on to verse 15. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons, and thy sons' wives with thee. Go forth with the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons and thy sons' wives with me. Why did it take the same verse again? Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creepy thing that creepeth upon the earth. They may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. Here starts the next dispensation of human government, beginning here with Noah starting to repopulate the earth. So he had his marching orders, and he was going to actually be in charge of everything. He's the leader of the whole earth at this point. So that's why they call it the beginning of human government. Some other verses on this that reflect back to Genesis 1:22, when also the same order was given to Adam. And God blessed him, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. That's what God gave the same order to the animals then, too. And also Psalms 121:8. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Okay, going back to Genesis 8:18. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives with him. Sure says that a lot. Every beast, every creepy thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds went forth out of the ark. And Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and every clean fowl, and offered a burnt offerings unto the Lord. So here we see that definitely the Lord is not forgetting who safely got him to this point. Realize that God just finished killing the entire planet. There's some estimates that think that it could have been as much as 3 or 4 billion people on the planet at this time. And the Lord smelt the sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. So this begins the third dispensation, human government. It's under conscience, as in innocence, man utterly failed, and the judgment of the flood marks the end of the second dispensation and the beginning of the third. The declaration of the Noahic covenant subjects humanity to a new test. Its distinctive feature is the institution for the first time of human government, the government of man by man. The highest function of government is judicial taking of life. All other governmental powers are implied in that. It follows that the third dispensation is distinctively that of human government. Man is responsible to govern the world for God. That responsibility rested upon the whole race, Jew and Gentile, until the failure of Israel under the Palestinian covenant. And that'll be the next one. It's in Deuteronomy 28:1. So from Genesis to Deuteronomy, will be in the nomadic covenant. And it shall come to pass that thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. So he brought the judgment of the capital in the times of the Gentiles, and so this begins also the times of the Gentiles, passed exclusively into. So we see that in Luke 21:24. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down to the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So once we get into the Palestinian covenant, that's when the Gentiles are actually going to be taken over. You also see this in Daniel 2:36 with the statue, and Nebuchadnezzar's statue. That and so this would be basically starting at about 600 BC. So from now, which is about 2400 BC, until because the next one actually starts at the Tower of Babel, I believe. And that's what we're just reading there in Deuteronomy. And that's when the Palestinian covenant will start. And that's where basically God separates everybody into their own. In other words, he tried to get people to separate in their own governments from now until then, but they didn't do it. So God's going to force them into it by confusing their languages. So they're going to fail again, in other words. And so that after that covenant, brought the judgment of the captivities when the times of the Gentiles, and that's talked about. We just read there in Luke, began the government of the world passed exclusively into Gentile hands, and that's in Daniel 2:36. So that basically the Abrahamic covenant will be another one, was taken away from them because of the wanderings in the desert and the fact that they didn't go into the promised land. We'll get into all that when we get to it. I'm not going to try to explain it all here, but that the times of the Gentiles will begin. And that's in Daniel 2:36 through 45. Now this is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And whosoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. This is thy head of gold. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh into pieces, and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as they saw as iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were a part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, there shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. In the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces, consume all these kingdoms, and it will stand forever. For as much as thou sawest the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron and the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation there is sure of. So we've talked about that particular dream before, and that's basically the four Gentile governments that are going to be in power, and they're in power even now. And mostly Gentiles. And that's still happening now. That the land of Israel is no longer in the control of the Jewish nation, and that's going to happen until that ends during the tribulation itself. So as they shall fall by the edge of the sword, back to Luke 21:24. And shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That was Jesus talking to Luke. That basically is going to happen after this period of time. But this particular reading I got out of my Schofield Reference Bible. It's kind of like a breakdown of this third dispensation. And there's one more verse, a couple of verses here that talk about it in Acts 15:14 through 17. Simeon hath declared how God at first did visit the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name. And to this agree the words of the prophets as it was written. And after this I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up, that the residual of men might seek after the Lord, and all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, saith the Lord, who doeth all these things. Just another passage that talks about this period of time of the Gentiles. Then both Israel and the Gentiles have governed for self, not God, is sadly apparent. A judgment of confusion of tongues ending in a racial testing, that of the captives of Jewish, while the Gentile testing will end in the smiting of the image in Daniel 2. And the judgment of the nations is in Matthew 24:31 through 46. That's the sheep and goat judgment. And that's at the end of the tribulation. I won't read that. It's pretty long. And we're already getting to the end here. So that's basically the dispensation and a kind of a breakdown of the next couple of dispensations. But this next one is human government. And those are the different human governments that are going to be in play between now and basically until Jesus returns. So back to Genesis 8:22. This is the end of the chapter. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. That was a fascinating verse when I started researching it. While the earth remained, in the Hebrew, as yet all the days of the earth. We check out Isaiah 54:8. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer. So even though he brought judgment on the earth, that he's going to remember his people. In the end. And it talks about seed time and harvest. Pretty interesting thing that I never really knew before. So I threw in here is that we as from European descent to think of 4 seasons: summer, spring, winter, and fall. But actually, I never realized that in the Middle East, they actually have 6 seasons. And we saw them here in this verse. And so if you look closely, while the earth remaineth, seed time, harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter. 6 of them. Day and night are not seasons, shall not cease. And it's interesting that is still true to this day. But there are 6 divisions in the text which obtain in Palestine among the Hebrews and exist among the Arabs to this present day. According to the gracious promise, the heavenly bodies have preserved their courses, the seasons their successions, and the earth its increase for the use of man. So some references to this over in Exodus 34:21. 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. And in earing time and in harvest thou shalt rest. Psalm 74:16 and 17. The day is thine, the night also is thine. Thou hast prepared the light and the sun. Notice it says the light and the sun. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. Thou hast made summer and winter. And going over to Song of Solomon 2:11 and 12. Lo, the winter is past, and the rain is over and gone. And the flowers appear on the earth, and the time of the singing of the birds is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. And last but not least, over in Isaiah 54:9. For this is as the waters of Noah unto me, for as I have sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so have I sworn that I would not be wroth with thee, nor rebuke thee. So it's basically a promise that God will not destroy the earth ever again. I thought that was kind of neat, that idea that there's actually 6 seasons celebrated in the Middle East. So that's what I had for today, and that finishes chapter 8. A little side note there into Revelation, which I find fascinating study because of it's right around the corner. Even though we won't be here, I think it's important to study and to keep our forefront in our minds. Because as we're witnessing to people, it's probably important to point out what the future holds. And I know it's a lot better now to seek the Lord while you still can, as they say. Because once that rapture happens and they go deep into the tribulation, it's not going to be a fun time. So let's end with a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord. Thank you so much for the promises you give us. And the warnings also, Lord, that to keep out of your wrath, it's best to look to you now and to seek your guidance and your love, and to become come into your family now rather than later. And we give you praise and thanks. And may we all be ever joyful when one more sinner repents. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen. It's true that they celebrate in heaven every time a new believer repents. So Important words to remember. So we'll talk again tomorrow. We'll head into chapter 9. Have a good day.